This is an article from Kurt Nimmo on Infowars.com today. DHS-funded consortium warns that sovereign citizens are the #1 domestic terror threat. It says that a University of Maryland project funded by the Department of Homeland Security has designated the so-called sovereign citizen movement as the #1 terrorist threat in America. And as Kurt Nimmo points out, sovereign citizens don't constitute a cohesive movement, although the government characterizes it as such. In other words, there's not any organization where you go and join up as a sovereign citizen like you would join the Ku Klux Klan or something like that. But of course, the Southern Poverty Law Center likes to portray it as such, and essentially what they are terrorist pimps. The SPLC works with the DHS to formulate the terrorist threat posed by citizens that allegedly belong to this movement. And according to the report that was issued last month, quote, sovereign citizens were the top concern of law enforcement and ranked ahead of neo-Nazis, of the KKK, the Patriot Movement, other idiosyncratic sectarians, as they put it, including survivalists. Now, how is a survivalist a threat to the government? Well, I guess it does threaten the police state. Certainly, they seem to be threatened by it. And if you look at this table here, look at that. You can see sovereign citizens up at the top, the potential threat. They're a 3.2 versus Islamic extremists who are ranked as only a 2.89. There you go. Now, I think it's kind of significant, frankly, that when we came back from the Bundy Ranch, of course, that happened on a Saturday, and on Monday, Glenn Beck had Mr. Bundy on his program, and they were pushing him, asking him, gee, you sound an awful lot like a sovereign citizen. Are you a sovereign citizen? He had no idea what they were talking about. It's a very vague term. It's something like an assault rifle, which essentially means whatever they wish it to mean at any given time. It's something that sounds scary, and they do scare law enforcement about it. It is the FBI that is scaring people about it. And as Kurt Nimmo points out in his article, the FBI has been the source of most of the domestic terror threats that have happened. And we've shown this over and over again. We've had Judge Napolitano has spoken at length about most of the threats coming from the FBI. So the FBI is concerned about their image, and they have hired a firm, now we learn according to a request for a proposal, to rate positive and negative stories about the agency. This is from the Washington Times, and they say the FBI is hiring a contractor to grade news stories about the agency as either positive, neutral, or negative. They want them to score the news coverage as part of a new daily news briefing service that the agency is seeking as part of a contract that could last for up to 5 years. And this is coming from their public affairs office. They say they need a contractor that's going to help them monitor breaking news, editorials, long-form journalism projects, and the larger public conversation about law enforcement. See, this is what we keep telling you over and over again. The government, the federal government, is rapidly moving into propaganda mode. They have legalized things that have been prohibited, activities that they've been prohibited from since the Cold War. They propagandized communist countries in Eastern Europe. They were prohibited from doing that here domestically. They've lifted that prohibition. They have consistently talked about how no one believes them anymore. They have to monitor public opinion. They have to manipulate public opinion. We see this increasingly on Facebook. We see that Palantir, which is a large contractor for data mining for the federal government, has now acquired someone who does that with Twitter. They want to monitor public opinion constantly so they can then alter it. And they want to know what people are doing about it. But of course, a journalism professor also points out that this has another aspect besides just manipulating the public. Journalism professor at Northwestern University, Dan Kennedy, says it raises troubling questions for journalism. He said, you would certainly worry that this could affect your access. It might affect the way they're going to approach your questions, whether they're going to be extra careful not to make the news if you're on the bad list. In other words, you got to be careful with these guys or they're not going to give you access. They will punish you by removing access. And that is the thing that really pulls back and destroys freedom of the press. Look at this report that just came out today about what the New York Times has been doing regarding the reporting in Gaza. Now, this is from Greg Mitchell, who is someone who works for The Nation or used to be a writer for The Nation. And he points out what happened in the narrative in Gaza. He says the New York Times today casually mentions one specific thing that was axed by Israeli censors in the wake of the soldiers' alleged capture. And of course, that was portrayed as him being kidnapped, as him being seized. But of course, soldiers have traditionally been captured. And so you have to start asking a question right there when they start using non-traditional terms to try to make this guy look like a victim when he's a soldier, you have to kind of question the narrative there. But he goes beyond that, and he says there were connections that they were prohibited from talking about. He was connected to the country's defense chief. In other words, this would be like the Secretary of Defense in our country. They were not allowed to say that the guy that was captured was related to equivalent to the Secretary of Defense. He said, of course, such a detail would have also informed the New York Times readers about one reason for Israel's fury, which resulted in over 200 deaths. He said Israel at that time already suspected that the soldier might have been killed and not captured because it was already testing remains for DNA. Yet they stated flatly, and the New York Times focused on this, that the soldier was captured and not killed. Now, he has several updates to the story. In his second update, he had said the New York Times publishes the first story since the quote-unquote censorship order, and it complies by reading a section of the story over the phone to Israeli officials. Now, here's the interesting thing about that. Just a couple of hours before they read this article to the Israeli government to get their approval for how they had worded it, what they had said, just a couple of hours before that, the New York Times editor had said this. He said, the very idea of censorship or gag orders by a foreign government is a disturbing one, not only for journalists, but all of those who value the free flow of information. And it's heartening to hear that the New York Times has not submitted any articles for review, and I hope it will remain the case as the situation develops. Well, that isn't what happened. That's why you have to be very concerned about any news source, especially news sources that are always in the inner circle, because they have typically traded that access. They've traded their journalistic integrity for that access. Not always, but that's often the case. Now, stay with us. Right after the break, we're going to have some interesting stories about the threat of robots. And also, this week is the Black Hat Conference in Las Vegas, and we're starting to learn some things about how easy it is to hack into the Internet of Things. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Alex Jones here to tell you about how you can help spread liberty worldwide while also enjoying what I have found to be the best tasting 100% organic coffee on the planet. For more than a decade, my favorite coffee has come from the high mountains of southern Mexico, where the Chiapas farmers grow their unique shade-grown Arabica beans. We have now managed to secure these sought-after beans in a highly customized blend. Discover and try a bag of the Patriot Blend 100% organic coffee at InfoWarsLife.com. This coffee gives you a long, smooth pick-me-up for hours without the headaches and heartburn that so many other coffees give me personally. Hands down, this is my favorite coffee, and it's taken us years to secure connections directly to the Chiapas Mexican farmers. Drop by the site today, order a bag or two, and I don't think you're going to be disappointed. Available in original or with our immune support infusion blend. You will be supporting a free press, all the while enjoying a truly great tasting cup of my favorite coffee. Available at InfoWarsLife.com.